The night she remembered most didn't begin with fireworks or drama. It began with a soft knock and the sound of wind brushing along the porch, the kind of sound that made a quiet evening feel heavier than it should. Emma had always believed calm nights were predictable. But this one would break that belief forever. She was standing in her small kitchen, listening to the kettle hum, when she saw the porch light flicker through the window. Her neighbor, Ryan, stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, snow collecting on his shoulders like the night had decided to claim him first. Their street had always been friendly enough. People waved. People nodded. But Emma and Ryan rarely spoke more than a polite greeting. Still, something in his expression made her walk to the door before the kettle even finished boiling. When she opened it, the cold air rushed in, and Ryan offered a small, almost shy smile. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "I think I lost power again." "Yours still on?" Emma nodded. "Yes. Do you need anything?" He hesitated. The kind of hesitation that hinted he didn't want to ask. The kind that hinted he had nowhere else to go. "I was wondering," he said slowly, "if you had a spare flashlight. I've been trying to find mine for, well, too long." She could have just handed him the flashlight and closed the door. But loneliness recognizes loneliness. And something in his eyes felt familiar. "Come in," she said. "It's warmer. I can grab one." He stepped inside, brushing the snow off his sleeves, looking around as if entering someone's home after dark required permission from every piece of furniture. Emma found the flashlight easily, but as she returned to the living room, she noticed him staring at her front window. "The storm's getting worse," he murmured. "Maybe you shouldn't be alone tonight." It was an innocent comment. Sincere. Protective in a quiet, steady way. Emma swallowed. She hadn't planned on company. But the idea didn't feel wrong. The lights dimmed twice in the next minute, and Emma instinctively looked at him. "Maybe you shouldn't be alone either," she said. He laughed softly, the sound warm and careful. "Well, fair point." They sat at her small dining table, 2 mugs of steaming tea between them. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply listened to the wind rattle the windows and the clock ticking on the wall. Then, slowly, the conversation began. Not big stories. Not personal confessions. Just small, honest moments. He talked about how he moved to the neighborhood for a fresh start. She talked about how the house still felt too quiet since her sister moved away. He listened. Really listened. The kind of listening that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Every time the lights flickered, he glanced at her, as if making sure she wasn't afraid. And she wasn't. Not tonight. Not with him here. But even quiet evenings have turning points. When Emma stood to refill the kettle, she froze halfway to the stove. Something outside caught her eye through the frosted window. A light. A shape. A movement she didn't recognize. Ryan followed her gaze instantly. "What is it?" he asked. She shook her head. I'm not sure. I thought I saw someone near the fence." He walked to the window beside her. Snow blurred everything, turning shadows into shapes that didn't quite make sense. But Ryan stiffened. He saw something too. A moment passed. Long enough to feel like the night was holding its breath. "It might be nothing," he said in a low, steady voice. "But let me check. Just to be safe." Emma grabbed his sleeve without thinking. "Ryan, wait. Maybe you shouldn't go out there." He looked at her hand softly, calmly, with a hint of something she couldn't quite name. "I'll be careful," he said. "Promise." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him, leaving Emma staring at the empty space where he had just stood. The wind howled harder. The porch light flickered again. Shadows moved in ways she couldn't explain. Minutes passed. Too many. Far too many. And when she finally opened the door to call his name, she saw something that made her heart stop cold. Ryan was standing still near the edge of the yard. Not moving. Not speaking. Just staring at something she couldn't yet see. Then he turned slowly toward her, and his face told her everything. Whatever he had seen, whatever now stood in the dark snow beyond her fence, was not nothing. And the night was no longer the quiet one she thought it would be. If you're enjoying this story so far, Please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Emma stepped onto the porch, gripping the railing as the cold air wrapped around her like a warning. Ryan stood near the fence, unmoving, the falling snow settling on his shoulders. He didn't look afraid. But he didn't look calm either. Emma called out softly, "Ryan, what do you see?" He didn't turn right away. When he finally did, his voice came out low and careful. "There's someone out here," he said. "But they're not moving." Emma blinked against the wind, trying to make sense of the shadow near the fence. It stood just beyond the reach of the porch light. Tall. Still. Silent. Her pulse picked up. "Maybe it's just the neighbor's post," she whispered. Ryan shook his head. "No. It wasn't there when I walked over." A gust of wind pushed against them, and the shadow seemed to shift, just slightly, just enough to make Emma step back. Ryan took a slow breath and glanced at her. "Go inside. Please." But she didn't move. The idea of leaving him alone in the snow felt impossible. "Ryan, what if?" He cut her off gently. "I won't go far. Just to the fence." Emma knew she shouldn't follow. She knew the smart choice was to stay inside and lock the door. But the night didn't feel dangerous, only strange. Only uncertain. She followed him down the steps. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they moved through the yard. Each step felt louder than the last, echoing in the quiet. When they reached the fence, the shadow was gone. Just gone. As if the snow had swallowed it whole. Ryan scanned the yard again, his eyes sharp, focused. "I swear it was here," he murmured. Emma touched his arm gently. "I believe you." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. "Maybe the storm's messing with our eyes," he said. It almost sounded true. Almost. They walked back toward the porch slowly. Emma fought the urge to keep glancing behind them. Something about the night felt heavier now. More aware. Inside, the warmth wrapped around them as the door closed. Ryan brushed snow from his hair and shook his head with a soft laugh. "Well," he said, "that was not how I expected this evening to go." Emma tried to smile. "You and me both." He sat at the table again while she refilled their cups. But the mood had shifted. They were both listening. Both waiting. After a long moment, Ryan spoke again. "Have you ever felt like a place can change all at once? Like, without warning?" Emma nodded slowly. "Since my sister moved out, the house feels different. Not bad. Just emptier." Ryan's eyes softened. "I get that. I moved here for a fresh start, but sometimes the quiet gets too loud." Emma sat across from him, her hands wrapped around her cup for warmth. "Then why tonight?" she asked quietly. "Why come over?" "Really?" He hesitated again, but this time, it felt different. More vulnerable. "I saw your light flicker earlier," he said. "And I don't know, something told me you shouldn't be alone." Emma's chest tightened in a way she didn't expect. "That sounds strange, I know," he added quickly. "No," she said. "It doesn't." A soft rumble of wind hit the side of the house, and both of them looked toward the window. The night outside was deeper now, darker, the snow falling harder. Ryan leaned forward slightly. "I'm staying until the storm passes." "You shouldn't argue." Emma let out the smallest laugh. "I wasn't planning to." The kettle clicked off, sharp and sudden, making both of them jump just a little. They exchanged a nervous smile. Then, as Emma poured the tea, something tapped lightly on the living room window. Not loud. Not harsh. Just a gentle, almost polite tap. Ryan stood instantly. Emma froze, the spoon still in her hand. Tap. 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 3 soft knocks on the glass. "Stay here," Ryan whispered. But Emma's feet had already moved. She walked to the window beside him, her breath fogging the glass as she leaned close. There was nothing outside. Only snow. Only wind. Only darkness. But the tapping had been real. She knew it. He knew it. Ryan stepped back, breathing out slowly. "I don't like this," he said softly. Emma didn't either. Not one bit. But then she noticed something on the outside ledge. A mark. A small one. Something drawn into the frost. Ryan leaned closer to look. A simple shape. A crooked circle. Almost like someone had traced it with a fingertip. Emma's heart tightened. How would that get there? She whispered. Ryan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because both of them knew the truth that neither wanted to say out loud. Someone had been standing right there. Right beside the window. Watching. And the shape they left behind felt like a warning. Or a message. Or something far more unsettling. Ryan turned toward her, his voice steady but low. Emma, someone was here. And they wanted us to know. The storm raged harder. The house creaked. And the quiet evening they expected had become something entirely different. Something they could no longer ignore. Emma stepped back from the window, her breath catching as if the cold outside had slipped straight into her chest. The crooked circle stared back at her through the frost. Simple. Silent. But impossibly unsettling. Ryan stood beside her, jaw tight, shoulders tense. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stared at the mark, knowing someone had stood inches away from where they now stood. Emma finally whispered, "Do you think it's a warning?" Ryan shook his head slowly. "I don't know. But whoever did that, they weren't just passing by." A low hum from the heater filled the silence, trying its best to keep the evening steady. But nothing about the night felt steady now. Ryan closed the curtains with a smooth motion, as if blocking the outside might keep the unease from creeping further into the house. Emma stepped back to the table, her hands shaking as she set her mug down. Ryan watched her carefully. "Hey," he said softly. "You're safe." "I'm here." She nodded, but her voice trembled. "I haven't felt unsafe in this house before. Not even once." Ryan pulled out the chair across from her. "And I won't let anything change that. Not tonight. Not ever." Emma looked up at him, surprised by the quiet certainty in his voice. "You barely know me," she said. He held her gaze. "Some people you just understand without needing years." The warmth in his tone softened her fear. Just a little. The wind knocked against the siding, and the house groaned in response. Ryan glanced toward the closed curtains. "We need to figure out what that symbol means," he said. Emma swallowed. "But what if it means nothing? What if it's just someone playing a prank?" Ryan didn't look convinced. People don't choose a stormy night for jokes. And they don't stand still in the snow long enough to draw something unless they have a reason. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breathing. "Ryan, why do I feel like you're not telling me everything?" His silence spoke louder than any answer. He looked down at his hands, thumb tapping slowly against the table, a small habit he seemed unaware of. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy. "I've seen that symbol before." Emma's breath hitched. "Where?" He hesitated. Long enough to make fear curl into her ribs. "Back home," he said finally. "Years ago." Emma leaned closer. "What did it mean?" Ryan shook his head. "I never found out. It appeared on my fence one night. Same winter. Same kind of storm. And the next day, someone else in the neighborhood saw one on their door." Emma felt the air shift around her. "What happened after that?" Ryan's voice lowered, almost apologetic. "Nothing. That's the strange part. It just stopped." He lifted his eyes to hers. "But it always felt like someone was watching. For weeks. And then one day, it all disappeared like it never happened." Emma rubbed her hands together slowly. "And now it's here." Ryan nodded once. "Which means someone chose you. Or this house." The idea made her feel cold in a way no winter storm ever had. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Too softly. Ryan stood and walked to the front door, checking the lock again, pressing his hand against the frame as if testing its strength. Emma followed him, her voice shaky. "What do we do now?" Ryan turned toward her, that calm steadiness returning to his eyes. "We stay close to each other. And we stay alert." A sudden pounding sound echoed through the house. Not from the door. Not from the window. From the back of the house. 3 loud, deliberate knocks. Emma gasped and grabbed Ryan's arm. He reacted instantly, positioning himself between her and the sound. "Emma, stay behind me," he whispered. They moved carefully down the hallway, the lights flickering above them with each step. The knocking didn't continue, but the quiet that followed felt even worse. When they reached the back door, Ryan lifted a hand to stop her, then leaned close to listen. Nothing. Only wind. Only the storm. He slowly pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek outside. Emma held her breath. Ryan's shoulders stiffened, and Emma felt her knees weaken. "Ryan, what is it?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally turned to her, his voice was barely above a whisper. "There's another symbol." Emma covered her mouth. "Another circle?" Ryan shook his head. "No. Something different." He stepped back so she could see. Emma leaned forward, heart pounding. There, traced in the frost on the outside of the back door window, was a second mark. A straight line. Vertical. Bold. Drawn with purpose. Emma's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" Ryan swallowed hard. "It means this isn't random. Someone is trying to send a message." Emma stepped back, feeling the weight of the night pressing against her chest. "Ryan, what do they want from us?" He didn't speak. He just looked at her with something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Something protective. Something urgent. Something she didn't fully understand yet. He reached for her hand gently. "Emma, we are not letting this get any closer. Not to you. Not to this house." But the storm howled louder. The lights flickered again. And the house felt smaller than ever. Because now there were two marks. Two messages. Two signs that someone was watching them through the snow-covered dark. And Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the night was only just beginning. The storm pressed against the house as if the night itself wanted to come inside. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the second mark on the frosted glass. A single vertical line. Sharp. Deliberate. Ryan closed the curtain again and stepped back, running a tense hand through his hair. Emma whispered, barely breathing, "First a circle, now a line." "Why?" Ryan didn't answer right away. His eyes were focused, not on the window, but on her. As if he was calculating what would keep her safest. "It feels like they're marking the house," he finally said. "One symbol at a time." Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "Why mine? Why tonight?" "Maybe it's not about you," Ryan said quietly. "Maybe it's about whoever lived here before." Emma shook her head. "My family owned this place for years. Nothing strange ever happened." Ryan frowned. "Then it's not the house." Emma looked up at him slowly. "You think it's me?" Ryan paused. Then he reached out, steadying her arm. "No. I think someone knew you'd be alone tonight. And they picked the storm to hide in." That made her chest tighten. The heater hummed on again, filling the silence with a soft, trembling warmth. Ryan walked toward the living room, checking each window, making sure the curtains were closed. Emma followed him, her heartbeat loud in her ears. "Are you sure we shouldn't call someone?" she asked. Ryan turned, meeting her eyes. "We can call for help if anything escalates. But right now, all we know is someone was here. Someone left symbols. That's strange, yes, but not enough to bring the whole neighborhood out in a storm." Emma nodded, though her hands still shook. Ryan noticed. He stepped closer, speaking softly. "You're doing really well. Anyone else would be panicking right now." Emma didn't feel brave. But standing next to him steadied her. Not because he was fearless, he clearly wasn't. But because he kept choosing to stand between her and the unknown. A soft thud sounded from the other side of the house. Emma jumped. Ryan didn't. He lifted his hand calmly. "Wait." The thud came again, lighter this time. Emma whispered, "Is that inside?" Ryan shook his head. "No. It's the shed door. The wind probably." A louder thud cut him off. Emma grabbed his sleeve. "That wasn't the wind." Ryan exhaled, steady but tense. "Stay here. I'm just going to look from the front window." Emma followed anyway, her fear stronger than her reason. They reached the window together, and Ryan lifted the curtain corner carefully. Snow blurred everything outside, swirling in thick, white lines. The shed stood still. Nothing moved. Then Emma saw something shift near the fence. A shape. Not as tall as the first one. Not as clear. But definitely a shape. Her breath left her in one sharp, trembling gasp. "Ryan. I see it," he whispered. The shape wasn't approaching. It was pacing slowly. Back and forth. Back and forth. As if waiting. Emma and Ryan stepped away from the window at the exact same time. Emma whispered, "Why are they doing this?" Ryan didn't answer. Not immediately. But his expression changed. Something clicked in his mind. He walked to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down as if the weight of the night had finally connected into a pattern. Emma stood across from him. "Ryan, talk to me. What are you thinking?" He rubbed his forehead slowly. "When I saw that symbol years ago, the circle. I told you nothing happened afterward. But that wasn't entirely true." Emma's stomach tightened. What actually happened? Ryan looked up, eyes steady but shadowed by something he'd been carrying alone for years. "A neighbor, one I barely knew, came to my door a few days later. She said she saw the same symbols. She said someone had been leaving them around houses where people spent the night alone." Emma's breath trembled. "What for? Why?" Ryan shook his head. No one ever figured that part out. Some people joked it was just kids. Some people thought it was someone checking houses that looked empty. But the symbols always came in pairs. Emma blinked. "A circle and a line?" Ryan nodded. Emma whispered, "So, what does the pair mean?" Ryan's voice dropped to a soft, heavy tone. "She told me it meant the house was being tested." Emma felt the room tilt. Tested for what? Ryan held her gaze, his voice gentle but firm. For how vulnerable it looked. The heater kicked off. The house went still. A storm howled outside. A shape paced near the fence. Two symbols marked the walls of Emma's home. Emma's voice broke as she whispered, "So they think I'm vulnerable?" Ryan took her hands without hesitation. "No. They're wrong. They have no idea who's here with you tonight." His voice softened even more. "And they don't know how far I'm willing to go to protect you." Emma's breath caught, not in fear, but in the quiet certainty in his eyes. But before she could speak, the house suddenly went dark. All the lights. All at once. The storm roared. The window rattled. And somewhere outside, the pacing stopped. Emma gasped. Ryan squeezed her hand. "Stay close," he whispered in the darkness. "We're not alone out there anymore." The darkness fell so suddenly it felt intentional. Emma froze, gripping Ryan's hand even tighter as every sound in the house sharpened, the wind, the faint groan of the wood, the quiet hum of fear settling between them. Ryan spoke softly into the dark. "It's all right. I'm here." Emma nodded, even though he couldn't see it. She didn't trust her voice enough to speak. A faint glow came from the hallway as Ryan switched on the flashlight she'd given him earlier. The soft beam cut through the dark, landing on the kitchen cabinets, then the floor, then the curtains, never lingering too long. "Stay behind me," he murmured. Emma followed him slowly, step by step, her breath shallow but steady. The pacing outside had stopped. That silence felt worse than the footsteps. Ryan moved toward the living room first. He checked the curtains, making sure they stayed closed. He checked the locks again. Everything was still secure. But it didn't feel secure. "Ryan," Emma whispered, "what if they cut the power on purpose?" He glanced back at her. "If they did, then they're closer than we think." Her heart thudded painfully. He noticed. "Emma," he said softly, "look at me." She did. "You're not facing this alone. Whoever they are, whatever they want, they're going to realize they chose the wrong house." A tremble left her chest, but this time it wasn't fear, it was trust. Relief. Something warm forming in the middle of the storm. They moved toward the back door together. The flashlight beam slid over the curtain. The frost on the window seemed thicker now, as if someone had been breathing on the glass moments earlier. Ryan slowly lifted the edge of the curtain. Emma leaned forward behind him, her breath caught. Outside, the yard looked still. Snow falling softly. Fence half covered. But the shed door. It was open. Just a crack. Wide enough for someone to slip inside or slip out. Emma gripped Ryan's arm. "Did you close it earlier?" Ryan nodded once. Emma whispered, "Then someone's been inside it." Ryan didn't deny it. He simply took a steady breath, lowered the curtain, and stepped back. "We're not opening that door tonight," he said. "No matter what." Emma nodded, grateful for the firmness in his voice. Another sound echoed through the dark, this one close, too close. A soft brushing sound. Like fingertips trailing across the outside wall. Emma gasped. Ryan moved instantly, placing himself between her and the noise. The brushing slid along the siding. Slow. Lingering. Then it stopped beneath the window. Silence. Ryan lifted the flashlight and pointed it toward the glass. The frost shook slightly, as if someone had touched it. Emma whispered, "They're right there." Ryan exhaled, steady but fierce. "No. They're leaving." Emma blinked. "Leaving? How do you know?" He pointed to the frost. Fresh streaks were sliding downward, not from fingers this time, but from warmth fading away. Someone had been there. But they were moving on. Ryan lowered the flashlight. "They've done what they came to do." Emma hugged herself. "And what was that?" Ryan stepped closer. There were 2 marks. A test. But they saw the lights go out, saw movement inside, saw you weren't alone. They thought you'd panic. They thought you'd break. Emma swallowed. "But I didn't." Ryan smiled softly. "No. You held on. And you weren't alone." For the first time that night, Emma breathed deeply. Fully. The fear didn't disappear entirely. But something stronger settled in its place. Trust. Ryan checked the front and back doors one last time, then guided her gently toward the living room. "Sit," he said. "You've been through enough tonight." Emma sat on the couch, pulling a blanket over her shoulders. Ryan sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not close enough to overwhelm her. The storm continued outside, but the worst had passed. The marks would melt by morning. The shed door could be fixed. The power would come back. But what happened between them wasn't going to fade as quickly. After a long quiet moment, Emma spoke. "Ryan?" He turned his head toward her. "Yes." Her voice was soft, but steady. "Thank you. For staying. For everything." His expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. "I didn't stay because I felt responsible," he said quietly. "I stayed because I wanted to." Emma felt warmth rise to her eyes, not from fear, but from something gentler. He glanced toward the window, then back at her. "You don't have to face nights like this alone," he whispered. She didn't look away. "Maybe I don't want to." A small, quiet smile formed on his lips. "Then you won't." The storm outside finally began to ease, the wind calming into a soft whisper. Emma leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Ryan didn't move. He just breathed steadily, as if anchoring her to something safe. And for the first time that night, the house felt warm again. Safe. Not because the danger had passed. But because she wasn't alone anymore. Because someone had chosen to stay. To protect her. To care. The night had begun with a knock. With fear. With shadows in the snow. But it ended with something she hadn't expected. Connection. Courage. And the quiet beginning of something she wasn't ready to name. But could finally feel.